Hi guys, so I've been thinking about it, students, and now that it's going to be even longer until we can get back together to see each other in person, I thought that some of you might be wanting to continue on with our class Read Aloud, City of Ember. So I thought I would do that, read a little bit. I don't know if I'll do it each day or every couple days or what, haven't quite decided yet, but I did want to keep you going with our Read Aloud. So if anyone's joining us and you haven't read this book before, I'll give you a very brief overview. We're about halfway through the book, my homeroom class is. So City of Ember is a book about an underground city called Ember. And the people, though, that live there right now don't know they're underground. They think this is just how the world is. The builders made this underground city over 200 years ago from when the story is taking place. As a place to protect the people from some really awful things going on in their world, like some really bad wars and plagues. So they made this underground city so that the entire population wouldn't die out. And so the main characters, Lena and Dune, they are living in this underground city. They're both 12, and in Ember, when people turn 12, they stop going to school and they get a job, and they are just a part of regular society, working hard with their jobs. And they don't get to do any job they want. They have to draw a job out of a bag. It might be something good, it might be something horrible. So right now, Lena is a messenger. She goes around delivering messages because in their city, they don't have electricity or cars or much of anything, because the builders left instructions for them for how to get out of this underground city after 200 years. Those instructions were put in a locked box, and after 200 years they were supposed to find these instructions and they'd tell them how to get out and back to the real world. Well, those instructions were lost, and Lena thinks she has found them, but she doesn't know what they are yet. The instructions were all torn up and chewed up by her little sister Poppy, who found them in their granny's closet. And I know I'm not giving a very good summary here. I'm kind of all over the place, but better than nothing, I guess. And so anyways, they don't have much of anything. They're running out of supplies because they should have been out of Ember by now. And like I said, we're about halfway through the book. Sadly, Lena's granny just passed away. I'm going to back up a little bit, class, if you remember at all where we were when we left off before spring break. I'm going to back up just a little bit. We're in chapter 11 called Lizzie's Groceries. Lizzie is Lena's best friend. Lena spent all that day in Mrs. Murdo's house, which was just like theirs, only neater. There was one couch and one fat chair covered in fuzzy striped material, and one big table. Only Mrs. Murdo's table wasn't wobbly like theirs. On the table was a basket, and in the basket were 3 turnips, each of them lavender on one end and white on the other. Mrs. Murdo must have put them there, Lena thought, not because she was going to have them for dinner, but also because they were beautiful. Lena sat sideways on the couch with her legs stretched out, and Mrs. Murdo covered her with a soft gray-green blanket. "This will keep you warm," she said, tucking it around Lena's legs. Lena didn't really feel cold, but she did feel sad, which was in a way the same. The blanket felt good, like someone holding her. Mrs. Murdo gave Poppy a long purple scarf to play with and made a creamy mushroom soup with potatoes, and all day Lena stayed there snuggled under the blanket. She thought about her grandmother, who had had a long and mostly cheerful life. She cried some and fell asleep. She woke up and played with Poppy. The day had a strange but comforting feel to it, like a rest between the end of one time and the beginning of another. On the morning of the next day, Lena got up and got ready to go to work. Mrs. Murdo gave her beet tea and spinach hash for breakfast. "The singing's coming up soon," she remarked to Lena as they ate. "Do you know your part?" "Yes," said Lena. "I remember it pretty well from last year." "I rather like the singing," said Mrs. Murdo. "I love it," Lena said. "I think it's my favorite day of the year." Once a year, the people of the city came together to sing the 3 great songs of Ember. Just thinking of it made Lena feel better. She finished her breakfast and put on her red jacket. "Don't worry about Poppy, I'll take care of her," said Mrs. Murdo as Lena headed for the door. "When you come back this evening, we'll talk about how to proceed." "Proceed?" said Lena. "Well, you can't live by yourselves, just the 2 of you, can you?" "We can't?" "Certainly not," said Mrs. Murdo sternly. "Who's to take care of Poppy while you go off delivering messages?" "You must move in here with me. I have an empty bedroom after all, and quite a nice one. Come and look." She opened a door at the far end of the living room, and Lena peeked in. She had never seen such a beautiful, cozy room. There was a big, lumpy bed covered with a faded blue blanket, and at its head 4 plump pillows. Next to the bed was a chest of drawers with drawer handles shaped like teardrops and a mirror attached to the top. The carpets on the floor were all different shades of blue and green, and in the corner was a sturdy square table and a chair with a back like a ladder. "This will be your room," said Mrs. Murdo, "yours and Poppy's. You'll have to share the bed, but it's big enough." "It's lovely," Lena said. "You're so kind, Mrs. Murdo." "Well," said Mrs. Murdo briskly, "it's just common sense. You need a place, I have one. You go on now, and I'll see you this evening." 3 days had passed since Lena and June had seen the man in the pipeworks, and there hadn't been any special announcements. So if that man had discovered a way out of Ember, he was keeping the news to himself. Lena couldn't understand why. As Lena ran through the city with her messages on her first day back to work, it seemed to her that the mood of the people was even gloomier than before. There were long, silent lines at the markets, and knots of people gathered in the squares, talking in low voices. Many shops, more each day it seemed, displayed signs in their windows saying "closed" or "open Monday and Tuesday only." Every now and then the lights flickered and people stopped and looked up in fright. When the flickering ended and the lights stayed lit, people just took a breath and walked on. Lena delivered her messages as usual, but inside she felt strange. Everywhere she ran, she heard the same words like a drumbeat in her mind. "Alone in the world, alone in the world." It wasn't exactly true. She had Poppy, she had friends, and she had Mrs. Murdo, who was somewhere between a friend and a relative. But she felt as if she had suddenly gotten older in the last 3 days. She was a sort of mother herself now. What happened to Poppy was more or less up to her. As the day went on, she stopped thinking alone in the world and began thinking about her new life at Mrs. Murdo's. She thought about the blue-green room and planned how she would arrange her pictures on the walls. The one she'd drawn with her blue pencil would look especially nice because it would match the color of the rugs. She could bring her pillows from home and add them to the ones on the bed, and then she'd have 6 altogether, and maybe she could find some old blue dresses or shirts and make pillow covers for them. The blue-green room, the orderly apartment, the meals cooked, and the blankets tucked in cozily at night, all this gave her a feeling of comfort, almost luxury. She was grateful for Mrs. Murdo's kindness. "I'm not ready yet to be alone in the world," she thought. Late that afternoon, Lena was given a message to take to Lampling Street. She delivered the message, and as she was coming back out onto the street, caught sight of Lizzie coming out the door of the supply depot. Her orange hair was unmistakable. "Lizzie!" Lena called out. Lizzie must not have heard her. She kept on going. Lena called again. "Lizzie, wait!" This time it was clear that Lizzie had heard, but instead of stopping, she walked faster. What's the matter with her? Lena wondered. She ran after her and grabbed the back of her coat. "Lizzie, it's me!" Lizzie stopped and turned around. "Oh," she said. Her face was flushed. "It's you. Hi, I thought it was... I didn't recognize you." She smiled brightly, but there was a distracted look in her eyes. "I was just going home," she said. Her arms were wrapped around a small, bulging sack. "I'll walk with you," said Lena. "Oh," said Lizzie. "Oh, good." But she didn't look pleased. "Lizzie, something sad has happened," Lena said. "My grandmother died." Lizzie gave her a quick sideways glance, but she didn't stop walking. "That's too bad," she said absently. "Poor you." What was wrong with her? Lizzie was ordinarily so interested in other people's misfortunes. She could be sincerely sympathetic, too, when she wasn't wrapped up in her own troubles. Lena changed the subject. "What's in the sack?" she asked. "Oh, just some groceries," said Lizzie. "I stopped at the market after work." "You did?" Lena was confused. She had seen Lizzie not 2 minutes ago leaving the storeroom office. Lizzie didn't answer. She began walking and talking quite fast. "It was so busy today at work. Work is so hard, isn't it, Lena? I think work is much harder than school and not as interesting. You do the same thing every day. I get so tired, don't you, running around all day?" Lena started to say that she liked running and hardly ever got tired, but Lizzie didn't wait for her to answer. "Oh, well, at least there are some good things about it. Guess what, Lena? I have a boyfriend. I met him at work. He really likes me. He says my hair is the exact color of a red-hot burner on a stove." Lena laughed. "It's true, Lizzie," she said. "You look like your head is on fire." Lizzie laughed too and lifted one hand to fluff her hair. She puckered her lips and fluttered her eyelashes. "He says I'm as beautiful as a red tomato." They were crossing Torque Square now. It was crowded in the square. People had just left work and were lining up at the shops and hurrying along with packages. A cluster of children sat on the pavement playing some sort of game. "Who is this boyfriend?" asked Lena. But just at that moment, Lizzie tripped. She'd been strutting along, being all beautiful, not paying attention to her feet, and the edge of her shoe caught on an uneven place in the pavement. She staggered and fell, and as she fell, she lost her grip on the sack. It hit the ground and toppled sideways, and some cans spilled out. They rolled in all different directions. Lena reached for Lizzie's arm. "Did you hurt yourself?" she asked, but Lizzie went scrambling after the cans so quickly it was clear she wasn't hurt. Wanting to help, Lena went after the cans too. Two had rolled under a bench, another was going toward the children, who were on their feet now, watching Lizzie's wild, spider-like motions. Lena picked up the cans under the bench, and for a second her breath stopped. One of them was a can of peaches. "Peaches," it said right on it, and there was a picture of a yellow globe. No one she knew had seen a can of peaches in years. She looked at the other one. It was just as amazing. "Creamed corn," it said. Sorry, there's a lot of dogs barking right now. "Creamed corn," it said. Lena remembered having creamed corn once as a thrilling treat when she was 5 years old. Remember, they live in this underground city, no way of getting new supplies, and they've been there way longer than they should have, so they're running out of everything. So some of these foods Lena has never even heard of, like peaches and creamed corn. Well, I guess she had creamed corn when she was 5. There was a shout. She looked up. One of the children had picked up a can. "Look at this!" he cried, and the other children gathered around him. "Applesauce," he said, and the children murmured, "Applesauce, applesauce," as if they had never heard the word before. Lizzie was on her feet. She had all the cans except for the 2 in Lena's hands and the one the child had picked up. She stood there for a moment, her eyes flitting back and forth from Lena to the children. Then she smiled, a bright, fake-looking smile. "Thanks for helping me," she said. "I found these on a back shelf at the market. What a surprise, huh? You can keep those." She waved the back of her hand at the children, waved again at Lena, and then took off, holding the sack by its neck so it hung beside her and banged against her legs. Lena didn't follow her. She walked home thinking about Lizzie's sack of cans. You simply did not find cans of peaches and applesauce and creamed corn on the back shelves of markets. Lizzie was lying. And if the cans hadn't come from a market, where had they come from? There was only one answer. They had come from the storerooms. Somehow, Lizzie had gotten them because she worked in the storeroom office. Had she paid for them? How much? Or had she taken them without paying? Mrs. Murdo had cooked a dinner of beet and bean stew for them that night. When Lena showed her the 2 cans, she gasped in astonishment. "Where did you get these?" she asked. "From a friend," said Lena. "And where did your friend get them?" Lena shrugged. "I don't know." Mrs. Murdo frowned slightly, but didn't ask any more questions. She opened the cans, and they had a feast. Creamed corn with their stew, and peaches for dessert. It was the best meal Lena had had in a very long time. But her enjoyment of it was tainted just a little by the question of where it had come from. I'm going to stop here for today. I hope to read some more later, and I hope you enjoyed that. And see you next time.